a reintroduction to the AutoBidder Formula Builder page. So there have been some updates, and I want to walk through everything there is included with the Formula Builder. So I'm going to start by creating a new calculator, and we'll walk through this together. So the core part of the Formula Builder, there's two parts. You've got the variables, and you've got the Formula Expression Builder. Variables are input types, such as, you might want to ask a customer, how many square feet is your house or your patio? What material? If it's a roof, you might ask for the slope. If it's a lawn, you may ask for, are there hills, any trees? Those are the questions that you're asking. And then within those variables, you assign a value. And then that value is what gets applied to the formula expression box right here. Okay. Now, when it comes to variables, you have a few different options. You can either do a base number, and a number would be perfect for something like square footage. You could also ask a number like number of windows, number of trees. My personal opinion, if you're going to use anything that uses a smaller number, like for example, if you're asking number of windows, it might be better with a stepper. A stepper has a plus or minus icon that you could just tap it to go up one or two. That's good for smaller numbers. If it's a larger number like square footage, it's better just to use a number. You also have a text input. Now, this is a little bit tricky because the text input doesn't actually affect the price, but you may want to get some information from a customer via a text box. So that's where that is. It's not that doesn't get used very much. A checkbox is basically good for yes or no, like something like, do you want us to clean the screens? Like if you're doing window cleaning, check yes, and then you would add up value. And so you can see you set a value when it's checked, you set a value when it's unchecked, and then that value would be what's applied to the formula. A slider works very similar to a number, except you just set a minimum and a maximum range and a step per, like how many between, like as you move it, you could go 1, you could go set it to 10, and then you give it a label. Now each of these variable types has an option to add help content. This is like a tooltip. This really makes your form look premium. When a customer's going through it, it's a little question mark icon that they can click it and it'll give them more context. And you can describe whatever it is you want here, add a little video if you want to help explain to the customer what to expect. Then you've also got the ability to link variables. This is like if you have a question, like for example, if you have house washing and roof cleaning, both of those questions probably going to ask the square footage of the house, number of stories, maybe you ask for walkout basement. You can link those questions or link those variables from service type to service type instead of having to ask the same question multiple times. So that's what the link variable is. Now dropdown, this is where you basically, we've all seen a dropdown. You give a customer or a person multiple options. So, in this case, you could say, like, I'll just say test, you add another option, test, and you can add as many of these as you want. And then for each option, you assign a value. So if you wanted to do something like, let's say single story, 2-story, 3-story. If it's single story, you might keep it 0, right? Let's say you add 0 to the price. If it's a 2-story house, maybe you want to charge $200 more or $100 more. So you just add 100 right there or whatever value. Now it does get complicated because it depends how you want to use it in the formula. And I'll get into that in just a minute and try to tie it all back together. How you build out your formula would determine how you want to collect the pricing. Because I would generally set it like 1.2. And then instead of doing an addition in the formula, you do multiplication. So 1.2 would be like adding 20% to whatever the price is. Okay. Now you also have the ability to add an icon here. And with the icon, you can, just makes the form look a little bit better, more appealing by adding icons. Now, multiple choice works basically the same way as dropdown, except instead of it being a dropdown and a user clicks and then it shows a dropdown, it just has all of the options listed. And it's just a little bit better look in my opinion. And then another difference is that you can allow a customer to select multiple options. So this is useful if, let's say you're doing house washing and you want to ask a question for like stain types, like unique stain types. You've got your general basic house washing, and then you might have a question that asks for, it lists out all the different types of stains, like rust or oxidation or fallout or soot or any type of stain that might not be included with a typical wash. And then if they select any of those, you could add upsells. So you could attach it to an upsell to where if a customer selects a certain input here, you would show an upsell. So like soot removal, for example, if they say that their house has soot, you could either add it to the actual pricing formula, or you could just add an upsell option that has soot and it's like another $150 or whatever price you want to set right there. So that's multiple choice. Now backend value, this is a little bit of a more complicated, this and repeating group are a little bit more complicated input types. The way background value would work is, let's say you do pressure washing for flat surfaces and you want to have tiered pricing. So if the patio or surface or whatever is below 1,000 square feet, let's say you want to charge 25 cents per square foot if it's below 1,000 square feet. If it's between 1,000 and 15, maybe you would want to charge 22 cents per square foot. And then if it's over 3,000 square foot or whatever, maybe you want to drop the price to 18 cents per square foot, right? What you would do with backend value is you would add it as a variable. You do have to give it a name and everything. And then what you can do is you can change the value. So you can set rules. So you could say like, if square foot is below 1,000 square foot, this value is 25. If it's between 1,000 and 1,500, this value is 22. Okay. And then you could apply it to the formula just like you would any other variable. So that's how backend value works. And then repeating group. Repeating group is again a bit more complicated because the way repeating group works is you've got a value, or basically it's a formula within a variable. So this would be like if you do tree removal services, right? And you'd want to ask the customer for each tree, you'd probably want to know how tall it is, how thick it is it near any telephone lines, is it hanging over a house? And so like if a customer has multiple trees, you would need to get that information on each of the trees because each tree would have a different price. So that's where the repeating group would come in. Okay, so those are the different variable types. Now, the formula expression builder, this is basically just, you could see the example there. You take your input variables and you just build a formula. You can do addition, multiplication, subtraction, your core math functions, and you just build it out. So like, give you a super simple example, a lot of people that use AutoBidder are in exterior cleaning industry. So they do house washing. So a simple formula would be you take the square footage and maybe you set a base price per square foot of, let's say, 20 cents. And then that would be for like a simple house that's single story and vinyl siding. Okay, but let's say a 2-story house, you would charge 20% more for 2-story, 30% more for 3-story. You would just add that variable in right there to the formula, and then that updates the formula. Now you also have the option for minimum and maximum pricing. This becomes very useful because for house washing, you may want to have a minimum price of $250 or $350 or whatever, right? So even if it's a little tiny house, you have your minimum price. That's very useful. The minimum pricing is very useful for things like patios, especially if you only charge, let's say you charge 20 cents per square foot and a person's patio is, 10 by 10. Well, you're charging like $20. And maybe that, works out. Maybe you're okay doing that. But for patio cleaning, in my opinion, it really makes sense to charge a minimum of like 50 or 75 or something like that, even just for small patios. Now, this gets a bit more complex in the sense that you can add conditional minimums. So you turn on conditional minimums, and this would be a value that you set, like a minimum price, if certain conditions are met. So for example, if the customer selects full house wash and it's above, let's say, 2,500 square foot, you could set a minimum price of like $450 or $550 or whatever. Now you can also set maximum pricings, and this can be somewhat useful as well. I noticed that with a lot of house washing customers, sometimes the price can get pretty insane if you are building advanced calculations. So you might be thinking, why would I ever want to do max pricing? Well, sometimes it does make sense to set a cap so that you don't give astronomical prices to users. And, if you do need to review the price and update it and send them, a higher price, you can still do that. So this would be like, I don't have any variables added, but you can set conditions. Now, I mentioned earlier about the upsells. Okay. Now I'm going to skip over this part. This is the icon. You can upload your own icons, give it a name, give it a title. Now we've got settings. Okay. So let's briefly cover this. This is where you can add a description. You can add highlights. These are the highlights that would show on the pricing card. If a customer selects this service, you've got the ability to add an image or a video. And the image is nice. It's just like an intro image that shows. You could use either a graphic, like an infographic, to explain kind of what you're looking for in terms of information, or my personal favorite is to add a video and explain to the customer what kind of information you're looking for, how to fill out the form and whatnot. You've also got the ability to add a measure map, and there's a little tutorial here in each of these things showing you how this works. The measure map and the AI measure tool. The measure map is just a tool that allows the user to measure their square footage of their property. AI measure tool is it's better for things like patios and decks, just to get a rough square footage. And here's where we got upsell items. So let's say we go back to the house washing example. Maybe you want to do gutter brightening as an upsell for house washing. What you could do is just add it as an upsell, give it a name, and then you choose how you want to do the pricing. You can either charge it as a fixed amount, a percentage of the total service, or a total percent of the quote. My recommendation is to use a percentage of the service. So let's say your house wash price is $450. Maybe for gutter brightening, you want to charge 30% of that, right? So you'd be looking at an additional 100 or so. That's how I would look at it. And then you can set the percentage right here, and then choose whether it's protection, add-on, upgrade, or maintenance, give it a description. And if you don't set a conditional display, this will show no matter what. But you can turn on conditional display. And now there's no questions here, so you don't see this, but if you turn on conditional display, the way this works is you can make it set to where this upsell only shows if a customer answers a question a certain way. So if maybe you add a question, like I was mentioning earlier, with this certain stain types, tiger striping or black streaks on gutters. If a customer selects it, they would see this as an optional upsell. Okay. Now you also have this flow view builder, which I don't want to get too much into this because this might make you even more complicated. You're probably already a little bit confused at the moment if you're new to this. The flow view is just a visual builder to just kind of give you more of a visual, flow diagram of seeing how the questions kind of interact with one another. Okay. So that's an intro to the formula builder page. That was just a quick overview, kind of explaining it in detail. I didn't cover the AI formula builder. That's a whole nother thing. I'll have other videos explaining that in more detail, but that was just an overview of the formula builder itself. If you have any questions, please contact support, send us an email, reach out on Facebook, whatever's best for you, and we'll do our best to help you. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.